What if she wakes up? Sarah questioned as Mom looked upon her little boy. I'll only be gone a few minutes, she replied impatiently, so stop making it into something it's not. Sarah felt ashamed and confused, for she didn't understand Mom's sudden change in demeanor. Hello, you are listening to In My Words. The book I am reading from is titled The Monster We Call Dad by D.A. Riles. This book is not intended for young readers. After each reading session, I will briefly give information about a chosen plant. I hope through my words you will gain insight, knowledge, and a deeper appreciation and understanding of this mysterious and intricate world. Though the road may be long and hard, compassion and beauty can be gained through the enjoyment of nature and experiencing its wondrous gifts. Thank you for joining me. Chapter 25. The Final Child. The family was growing up and once again growing bigger. It was March 1967. Mom was pregnant with her sixth and final child. Sarah would be 6 when this sibling was born. She looked forward to having someone to care for. She recalled helping when her brother was born, and she would help when this child was born too. Sarah liked playing mom. The days passed quickly, and the new infant would be arriving soon. Sarah began having ominous thoughts about what the monster might do to the new baby. She wondered if this child would need to be protected from its intimidating ways. Sarah was helpless when it came to taking control for herself, but was extremely determined not to allow anything to happen to the new addition to the family. November 1967, the sixth child was born. She was a pretty baby girl. They named her Melody. Sarah was so happy to see the baby. She wanted to take care of it as if it were her own. One day, Mom gave Sarah the chance to see just how well she could take care of her little sister. Sarah, Mom called out. Sitting on the dirtied carpet, Sarah looked up from her coloring book as she heard Mom calling. Happy that Mom wanted to have her come to her, Sarah rose to her feet and walked into the kitchen. Mom was holding her shiny black purse with the gold clasp in her hand. Hearing her daughter's small footsteps approaching, Mom said, I'm going to run to the store for a minute. I want you to watch Melody. She's in the crib and should sleep till I get back. Looking around for Johnny and seeing him come up from behind Sarah, Mom continued, I'll take Johnny with me. Reaching her hand out toward her son, Johnny flashed a beaming smile at his mom. Happily, he trotted over to her and grabbed onto the bottom of the hard, shiny black purse. At the tender age of 3, Johnny had a charm about him. Inquisitive with his thoughts of how things worked, along with his blonde hair and light green eyes, gave the little boy ample charisma to draw in anyone who came near. Mom and Dad couldn't ignore their son's good-natured personality either, and eventually even teachers at school would be drawn into his charm. What if she wakes up? Sarah questioned as Mom looked upon her little boy. I'll only be gone a few minutes, she replied impatiently, so stop making it into something it's not. Sarah felt ashamed and confused, for she didn't understand Mom's sudden change in demeanor. Lowering her head, feeling guilty for upsetting Mom, Sarah briefly glanced up as she sadly watched Mom and Johnny walk out the door. Feeling suddenly alone and with a great weight of responsibility, Sarah stayed as quiet as she could, so as not to awaken Melody. Taking a seat back on the grimy carpet, Sarah continued to color in her fairy tale coloring book. Minutes had passed before Sarah heard the first whimpers of Melody. Walking into the small bedroom where Dad used to have his dark room, the older sister peered through the wooden bars with the white plastic strip on top and looked into the crib. Mom said you would sleep until she came home, Sarah said to her little sister. What's wrong? Sarah questioned more to herself than to Melody. Trying to soothe the child back to sleep, Sarah rubbed Melody's back. Melody squirmed and didn't want to be still. Shortly, Sarah noticed the unmistakable odor of a poopy diaper. Knowing the diaper needed changing now, and that it couldn't wait until Mom came home, Sarah tried to remember how Mom did it. This is the day she had waited for, but never realized how frightening it would be. Sarah felt a heavy weight on her shoulders, knowing that this was the time she had to prove to herself and her parents that she could be responsible. Melody's cries continued as Sarah lowered the side of the crib with her trembling hands. Talking in a soothing voice, Sarah said, "Don't worry, I'll get you into a dry diaper." Melody listened to Sarah's gentle voice, calming down enough for Sarah to remove the poop and potty-filled plastic pants. Placing the smelly, wet plastic covering at the end of the crib, Sarah proceeded to remove the soggy, soil-filled diaper. 2 large, wet, and sticky safety pins beckoned for their removal. Sarah pulled out one pin, then the other, from the smelly cloth diaper. She used the diaper to wipe off most of the poop from Melody's bottom. "Just like Mom does," she said, smiling lightly to herself. Grabbing the blanket, which was in a heap at the end of the crib, Sarah covered her little sister's bared legs with it. She didn't want Melody to get cold while she acquired the other items which were needed to properly change her sister's diaper. Pulling the side of the crib up, Sarah said more to herself than to Melody, "There, I'll be right back. I have to get a wet cloth." Calling over her shoulder as she walked to the bathroom so Melody would still hear her sister's voice, Sarah continued on. "I'm going to make the rag warm so you won't have to get cold while I clean you off." Sarah was feeling proud of herself for knowing the needed steps to change Melody's diaper without assistance. After wetting the rag, Sarah walked back to the crib and continued to talk on. "I am getting you a clean diaper and plastic pants." Pausing, she looked around and then continued her one-sided conversation. "See here? They are. I knew I would find them." Melody was being quiet during most of Sarah's conversation with herself. "Here's the washcloth," Sarah said as she wiped her little sister's behind. "Ooh, it's so poopy." Making a silly face at Melody, Melody cooed back at Sarah. "Poopy diaper, poopy diaper." Sarah began to sing her made-up song to the tune of "Oh, My Darlin'." "You have such a poopy diaper, a poopy diaper, a poopy diaper all day long." Responding to Sarah's song, Melody cooed again and flashed her a little baby smile. When Melody's bottom was sufficiently clean, Sarah added the soil cloth to the pile at the end of the crib. "Now for the clean diaper," Sarah said as she smiled at Melody. Of engrafting. Engrafting or grafting is the art of making a scion of one tree. Draw nourishment from another tree until in the end the wood and bark of the tree and the scion unite at the juncture, and they form but one tree. The scion or graft, thus connected with another stock, bears fruit of the same kind and quality as the tree from which it was taken, whether the stock which nourishes it bears the same fruit or not. Thus, a graft of the finest apple tree will produce fruit of the finest flavor, though grafted upon a crab stalk. And it is a rule to graft upon hardy wild stalks of the same genus, for if the trees were of a different genus, the operation would not succeed. Grafting affords generally the readiest means and often the only means of multiplying the most delicious fruit, which would degenerate if the attempt were to be made to propagate them from seed, or the stock of the improved variety would be too delicate to bear the severity of the seasons. The grafts or scions should be of the last summer's growth from the outward branches, firm, well-ripened, and healthy. The graft is always the middle part of each shoot, cut to 5 or 6 inches in length, or so as to have 4 or 5 good eyes or buds, but should be preserved at full length till grafting time. When the scion and stock are applied to each other, they are tied with bass and then covered with a thick coating of clay called grafting clay, which is prepared by incorporating common clay or stiff loam with 1/4 of fresh horse dung free from litter and a small portion of cut hay and water. The clay is allowed to remain until the union of the stock and graft is complete, which will generally be in a couple of months. Grafting is variously distinguished according to differences in the mode of conducting it, but the most usual kinds are the following. Number 1, whip grafting or tongue grafting. This is one of the most successful and common modes of grafting. It is performed in nurseries upon stalks of an inch or under in diameter. The stock and graft should be of the same size or very nearly so, and the sloping surfaces applied to each other in the manner of slicing a fishing rod should be at least an inch long. As soon as applied together, they should be tied with bass and covered with clay. Number 2, cleft grafting or slit grafting, as gardeners differently term it, is performed upon stalks from 1 to 2 inches in diameter and requires a cleft or slit to be made in the stalk of the reception of the graft, because the stalk is much larger than the graft. The head of the stalk being carefully cut off in a sloping direction, a perpendicular cleft or slit is to be made about 2 inches deep with a knife or chisel towards the back of the slope, into which a wedge is to be driven in order to keep it open for the admission of the scion. The latter must now be cut in the form of a wedge so as to fit the incision in the stalk. As soon as it is prepared, it should be placed in the cleft in such a manner that the inner bark of both the stalk and scion may meet exactly together. It is then to be tied in the same former mode of grafting. This and the last methods of grafting are usually performed in February or March. In arching or grafting by approach is a plan adopted when the stock and the tree from which the scion is to be taken are so near in that they may be easily joined together. It is usually practiced in April or May for oranges, myrtles, jasmine, etc., in which the ordinary modes of grafting do not perfectly succeed. In this process, the stock and scion at the part where they are to be joined are each to have their rind and wood pared away on one side of the length of 3 inches. A slit upwards is then made in the graft to form a kind of tongue, and a slit downward is made in the stock to admit it, that when joined together they may be less liable to slip out of their proper position. They have besides the usual security of the bandage of bass and a covering of clay. But as the junction thus formed may easily be strained by the motion communicated either by accident or wind to either tree, it is usual to erect a stake of sufficient strength to which both the stock and graft are tied. In about 4 months, the graft may be separated from the parent tree by sloping it off close to the stock and covering the bare part with fresh clay. I appreciate all of you who are watching my videos. If you have any questions regarding plant growing, or if you are interested in learning why I wrote the books I have, and if I am working on another book or two, please leave your comments below and I will try to get back to you in a timely manner. I am doing all the editing and producing of this content on my own. I never expected doing this at this stage of my life, but when circumstances demand, then it is important for me to create income where I can. Leaving a comment will help my videos get noticed more in the future and allow other people to view them. Also, purchasing one or both of my books will be very helpful. Thank you for your time and consideration. Please like, share, and subscribe. I look forward to having you join me again next time where I will highlight another plant, and I will continue to read from the book titled The Monster We Call Dad by D.A. Riles, which you can purchase from Amazon.com. Thank you for having joined me.